Now that I've had some time to experience quite a bit of Star Wars Outlaws, it's time for an Easter egg roundup. This is by no means every Easter egg in the game, because I'm sure I haven't found them all. These are just some of my favorites. If you haven't finished the game yet, there will be spoilers ahead. First, I want to throw out that the entire game seems to take place during the Crimson Reign comics by Charles Soule. That means Qi'ra has created a war between the criminal syndicates that's directly referenced multiple times. All of the syndicates in the game are involved, as well as Black Sun, who are mentioned but not seen. There's also a reference to Qi'ra's meeting with Princess Leia late in the game, and her flagship, the Vermillion, is talked about but also never seen in the game. The syndicate Zerek Besh was also first introduced in the Crimson Reign and Hidden Empire comics, although they were not shown, probably because their design was not yet finalized. Okay, now I'm going to split things up by what you can find on each planet to keep things easy, starting with Cantonica. Kay's story begins with a mission against the Sixth Kin, a syndicate in the Workers' District of Canto Bight, first created for the Dr. Aphra comics. Their uniform, design, colors, and logo are all consistent. We don't see their leader, an alien named Wynn Delphis, but we do get a mention of her, and we see her office from the comics. Kay's story partially ends on Cantonica as well. She and her team steal from the Zerek Besh leader, Sliro, and escape through some tunnels that lead to the Canto Bight Casino from The Last Jedi. On the planet Tashara, Kay meets Waka, a Rodian mechanic who wears the emblem of Sienar Fleet Systems, a company that built TIE fighters for the Empire. That could be foreshadowing his later betrayal. Kay travels under the alias Torin Valerio Nup, which might be a reference to Papa Torin. That character was created for the Lando comics as the leader of some sort of criminal organization. That could be a coincidence, but considering the alias was stolen from a rival syndicate, it makes some sense. Kay meets a Crimson Dawn agent named Alira on Tashara. She was introduced in the book Crimson Climb, all about Qi'ra's rise through Crimson Dawn. The game is her first on-screen appearance. An Imperial facility references a Star Destroyer named the Intrepid. That was the name of a Star Destroyer from the old X-Wing video game as well. Kay rescues a Galusian named Bosnok from the Empire. That species first appeared in Solo: A Star Wars Story in the form of Dryden Voss's lounge singer, Lulio Primoc. As Kay repairs the Trailblazer, she ventures into an old cruiser from the High Republic era. On board, we can read the ship logs, which say it was shot down by the Nihil, the primary marauding enemies of the High Republic books and comics. On the planet Kijimi, the primary criminal syndicate is the Ashiga clan, made up of Maleto people. They were first designed for The Force Awakens for the background character Sarko Plank. One of the collectibles there is a Dai Bindu leaf bottle. The Dai Bindu was a religious group known to have a monastery on Kijimi, and their order's symbol is what inspired the insignia of the Galactic Republic. George Lucas at one point considered calling the Jedi Bindu, but he shortened it to simply Jedi, and the Bindu term has popped up throughout the rest of Star Wars legends and canon. One of Kay's missions involves a robbery from a Crimson Dawn vault. Its appearance is similar to the one that could be found on Qi'ra's flagship, as seen in the War of the Bounty Hunters comics. Moving on to Tatooine, this is the big one. Star Wars fans are most familiar with it, so there are plenty of references to be made. Obviously, there are tons of iconic locations the player can visit, like Mos Eisley and Chalmun's Cantina. Kay will park the Trailblazer in Docking Bay 94, right where the Millennium Falcon was parked in A New Hope. You can visit the Lars homestead, which remains abandoned after the murder of Owen and Beru Lars. Inside, you can find a datapad offering some blue milk cheese in exchange for parts to fix Luke's T-16 Skyhopper toy. The book From a Certain Point of View noted Beru's love for cheesemaking, so this is a great deep cut. Tosche Station isn't far away from the homestead. It appeared in the Book of Boba Fett, but more importantly, that's where Biggs Darklighter's deleted scene takes place in A New Hope. In fact, you can visit the old Darklighter moisture farm. Unfortunately, there aren't any family photos or monuments to great mustaches, but the databank entry for the abandoned moisture farm location mentions that it once belonged to the Darklighter family. And of course, we can visit Jabba's palace to interact with the Hutt cartel. There are a ton of fun things to find inside. There are obvious references, like the presence of Han Solo's carbonite slab, although Jabba's other hunting trophies aren't there, so maybe he's still working out how to decorate around his new accent piece. Boba Fett can be seen through a vent, apparently considering picking up a bounty on the rebel Asara. There's a datapad warning people not to mess with the Bomar monks and reminds everyone what happened to Kraka the Hutt. This is another deep cut that I love. In Return to Vader's Castle issue 4, we get a story about Jabba's cousin who messed with the monks and wound up with his brain in one of their jars. Another datapad is from the Rancor keeper Malakili begging Bib Fortuna to stop feeding the Rancor bounty hunters because it's messing up its diet. The Rancor is called Patissa, which is how it was named in the book Aftermath Life Debt. Speaking of the Rancor, Kay has to survive its attack in Jabba's hangar. That location was detailed in reference materials and then appeared in the Battlefront games and the Book of Boba Fett. A cutscene shows Sliro tempting Bib Fortuna with more power, promising that he could one day sit on Jabba's throne, which of course he does after the Hutt's death. During the mission to recruit a weapons expert, Kay meets a Tusken tribe that resembles Boba Fett's tribe from the Book of Boba Fett. They request a Krayt Dragon Pearl in exchange for the weapons expert they hold prisoner. Kay is successful, and we see the pearl that was first introduced in the book Darksaber, seen in Knights of the Old Republic, and seen in live action in The Mandalorian Season 2. A Krayt Dragon skeleton can be found in the Dune Sea, like the one C-3PO stumbles across in A New Hope. And of course, you can be attacked by a living Krayt Dragon if you're not careful. One quest has Kay venture into the mouth of a dead Sarlacc to retrieve a tooth to trade to Jawas. Their odd fetch quest reminded me of the off-world Jawas in The Mandalorian, who sent Din to get an egg for them. Kay and Nix can share a meal of Sketo Chuga on Tatooine. I don't know what Chuga is, but Sketos were flying creatures from the desert world. On the mission Jabba's Gambit, Indy 5 tells the story of how he used to work for Gracchus the Hutt on Nar Shaddaa. That character and his headquarters were introduced back in 2015 in the rebooted Marvel Star Wars comics. Gracchus was arrested for having Jedi contraband and was later seen in prison in the Poe Dameron comics. There are also mentions of Jabba being the only Hutt left in control of the Hutt cartel. There was a Hutt council up until the Syndicate War, where we saw all of them except for Jabba killed by Darth Vader. So Jabba is carrying Hutt leadership all by himself at this moment. Fort Sunfire is an Imperial outpost you can visit on Tatooine that was introduced in the mobile game Star Wars Commander. You can travel to the city Bestine, which was known as the capital of Tatooine, which is weird because it seems more like a settlement when compared to Mos Eisley or Mos Espa. Wayfar is another settlement that was first created for the MMORPG Star Wars Galaxies, so it's cool to see some love for that game here. There's a fun wall of wanted posters that features Kay's face, but also some bits of graffiti, and one of them looks an awful lot like a Rakatan from Knights of the Old Republic. Heading to Akiva, the whole planet is a giant reference to the book Aftermath where it first appeared. The gangster Surat Nuat was also first introduced as a character in that book, where we learned that he killed his parents and froze his brother in carbonite, an object he then turned into a desk that we see in the game. He's based out of a cantina called the Alcazar, which can be visited in the planet's capital city, Murrah. Timon, or Snap Wexley, was from Akiva. He is one of the experts Kay can meet and learn new skills from in the game. He was left there with his aunts, Esmel and Shireen, who both briefly appear while Kay looks for their nephew. Timon ran a spare parts shop in his parents' old house, which we see in the game. An old B-1 battle droid can be seen resting on a table. Those might be parts for his droid friend, Mr. Bones, who is central to the Aftermath trilogy of books. He was said to have been activated 2 years before the game, so maybe these are simply spare parts for him, and Mr. Bones is hiding just off-screen. Timon leads Kay to an old droid factory from the Clone Wars when Akiva was under Separatist control. The catacombs and the droid factory were originally seen in Aftermath. An Ahia Ko temple can be found on the planet. The Ahia Ko were an ancient species that once lived on Akiva, and traces of their civilization are still around. You can play Lando Calrissian in Sabacc on the planet. In the game, you play a variant called Kessel Sabacc, but one line from Kay reminds Lando that this isn't Corellian Spike. That's another variant, and one Lando probably wouldn't enjoy being reminded of. That's what he was playing when he lost the Millennium Falcon to Han Solo. Kay's mother Riko joins the heist crew on Akiva. She is a slicer, and she seems to have electro tattoos similar to the one seen on Dr. Aphra in her comic book. Finally, let's move out into space and other miscellaneous locations. There are some familiar ships flying around like the Darius G-class freighter or the Rogue-class starfighter, and there are BFF-1 bulk freighters from the original X-Wing video game. There are a few mentions of Project Swarm and the use of Viper droids left over from that Imperial initiative. That was the code name for the Empire's search for the Rebel base eventually found on Hoth. Sliro has a datapad mentioning Imperial interrogation methods, one of them being the use of a Bor of the Myran. Bor Gullet from Rogue One was one of those, and we've seen the Empire use them to interrogate prisoners in the Dr. Aphra comics. Sliro mentions that the bounty hunter Vale has a small fortune stashed away on Niamos. That's the planet where Cassian Andor hid out on until he was arrested and sent to Narkina 5. The final battle is against a Star Destroyer called the Revelator. There was an Imperial dungeon ship with the same name in Star Wars Legends, so I assume this is just a coincidence. I couldn't find this one, but I know there's a conversation somewhere that can be heard between stormtroopers about the Purge of Mandalore, so we now know that the Night of a Thousand Tears must have taken place sometime around the Battle of Hoth. And finally, this is another one I didn't find myself, but I've seen some people posting that they found an Imperial note about a Corellian YT-2400 light freighter suspected of involvement in a local smuggling ring. Neither the ship nor its captain are mentioned by name, but I have to assume that's a reference to Dash Rendar from Shadows of the Empire, a video game that took place around the same point in the timeline in Star Wars Legends. Dash has already been mentioned in canon, and his ship, the Outrider, appears in the special edition of A New Hope, so I'm going to assume he's out there somewhere. But those are all the Easter eggs I saw for now. I know there are plenty more to be found, or ones I didn't mention, like all the animals you can pet on the various worlds, so let me know what secrets you've found in the comments, or let me know what your favorite Easter egg so far is. I think mine is Crack of the Huts mention. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.